today is the 1-year anniversary for my mother's going home to be with Adonai. And before I began my study for today, I was saying I pray that there would be something that had to do where I could kind of segue into my mother's passing. And lo and behold, the beginning part of Imod is about making yourself, and this has to do with the priesthood, the Kohanim, but it also applies to every one of us. We as believers who are, again, Mosaic, Messianic, and Apostolic, have a way of death and dying, of funerals and burial that is different from the nations and even different from the Christian religions. The Christianities do things many times according to the Goim. For some reason, the Christianities have been discipled by the Goim to the point that they are not following what Torah actually says. Now, one of the aspects in that, actually we've been studying this for several weeks now, having to do with the birth of a child, having to do with animals that are clean and unclean, having to do with situations in life, even situations in our health that make us unclean. And one of the things that it's important for everyone to remember, clean and unclean in English kind of sounds negative. But from a Hebraic point of view, it is the words tahor and tamai. Tahor is what is interpreted clean. Tamai is what is interpreted unclean. And this has to do with anything from foods to, again, scabs or a woman's time, childbirth. There's many things that make us tamai, both men and women. But there are ways to become tahor, to become what is translated as clean. Probably a better way, instead of saying clean and unclean, that to me is more of a Hebraic understanding, is presentable and unpresentable. When we are tahor, we are presentable before Adonai. When we are tamai, we're unpresentable before Adonai. Regardless, this clean and unclean have nothing to do with sin and no sin, with being perfect or it has nothing to do with any kind of guilt or shame, or all that should be taken away from the Hebraic concept. I know sometimes the nations have looked and Gentiles said, well, you guys are, does this guy have cooties and you don't have cooties no more? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with being presentable, and very much like what we would do today. I am dressed, hopefully presentable before you all today. While I could go to work out in the yard, and the other day I was working out in the yard. I was working with my bib overalls and doing dirty and kind of stuff like that. And I was wearing a chawaripa. What do you call a chawaripa? Like a hat, like a straw hat. Now dressed like that, I wouldn't come over here on a Sabbath morning and preach. It'd be okay, but that's not being presentable for what Adonai has taught us. There's presentable ways to come to Sabbath. There's unpresentable ways not to come to Sabbath. And there's all kinds of presentable ways. If you were to meet the president, They usually give you a protocols for meeting the president, what you should wear. If you want to go to the White House, you know, you're not going to show up over there all tirado, you know. You're going to be presentable. And so we have to be presentable. Adonai wants us to be presentable before him. Now, I know the word kosher has been used for something that is clean. But remember, the word kosher does not mean clean. The word kosher means fit. So kosher food are foods that are fit to be eaten. Foods that are not kosher are foods that are not fit to be eaten. They're not food. And so we don't really use the words from Torah, kosher or not kosher. The word tahor and tamai are the best words that are used. Now, what makes you tamai? What makes you unpresentable to come before the Mishkan, before Adonai? What makes you unpresentable to come before his throne? Well, everything that is unpresentable or tamai has to do with one thing, and that's death. Death is the ultimate opposite of Adonai and who Adonai is. Adonai is life. Adonai is light. Adonai is love. Adonai is the greatest. There's no word. There is never have been, even in, David didn't have the words to express. They're beautiful words, but not the words to express who our Adonai is. And the opposite of that is death. Our father Adam was said, okay, you know what? You may eat of all the trees. Even the tree of life was there. Think of it, the tree of life. You may eat of any of the trees. You could have bananas and apples and oranges and coconates and guava. You could have whatever you want. But of that tree in the middle, do not eat, for the day you eat of it, you shall die. In dying, you will die, the Hebrew says. In dying, you will die. And what did he choose? He chose death. Instead of life, he chose death. The opposite of what Adonai gave, the opposite of what Adonai had for him, everlasting life. He chose death. So right away he became tamai, unpresentable. In fact, he knew he was unpresentable because all of a sudden they looked at themselves and, and they started the first church of the fig leaf. And where you cover your own sin, you cover your own guilt and shame. Well, that's not going to take your tamai-ness away. Remember what Adonai used to take away their tamai-ness. Adonai slaughtered a lamb. The lamb slaughtered according to Revelation before the foundations of the world. Blood, innocent blood was shed to cover, to atone, to kippur for their guilt and shame. Now they were clean. Now they were kosher again. And Adonai uses so many illustrations of becoming tahor again. One of them is water. In fact, we learned several weeks ago, if you have a little creepy crawler and it dies on one of your dishes, it says you shall dip. After you wash it, by the way, after you wash it, then you shall richly dip it, you shall immerse it in a gathering of waters. The word gathering of waters is the word mikvah. In a gathering of waters, like we have a flowing gathering of waters back here, a mikvah, where we have water gathered. to immerse. And you shall immerse it, it says. You shall immerse it. You shall dip it in water. And when it comes up out of the water ritually, it will be what we call the hod. It will be presentable now. Now you could eat of it. And so Adonai uses those terms that we've been studying. Well, what happens when a person actually dies? Well, when a person dies, always remember, and this always has to do with blood. Because when death comes in, there's a cessation of the flow of blood, a stop in the heart, and the blood dies. There is death in the blood. And when the blood dies, it is again the ultimate of the minus, the ultimate of being unclean. By the way, we know it's not sin because when a mother has a baby, that's the most joyful time that there is. But yet, at that time, it says the mother is to keep away for either 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on the male or female, because she will be tamai. Again, tamai is not wrong. It's not sin. It's not negative. It's just that blood was shed in the birth of that baby, and that blood is dead. And so for those 1 week for a male, 2 weeks for a female, they are shut up. They are behind the doors. And again, at the time, the women would not come before the Mishkan. They would not come. They would be unpresentable because of the blood that was shed. Same thing at other times. It's because of the blood. In fact, you couldn't even touch a male or a female that had issues with blood or issues with emissions, that a pus or something like that, because things like that would make you unpresentable before Adonai. And so one of the things that we have, and again, there's so much that we could spend a lot of time here, but one of the things that we do is when someone dies, and this is for every one of us. I wish, or it is my prayer, a better word, that all of the Christianities would come into the biblical way of death and dying, of funerals and burials. And first of all, Adonai told us that death, that sin came into the world, and death through sin. And we all die. Every one of us, every one of our ancestors, every one of our descendants have and will die. Dust we are, and to dust we shall return. There's no such thing as dust to dust, ashes to ashes, by the way. That's a modern heresy. It's dust to dust. And so, biblically, there's only one way of burial, and that's burial in the ground, so we return to the dust. And so we bury our dead. The whole burial is burial in the ground, so that we what? We go back and become part of the ground. And at resurrection day, Adonai will raise the dead, of course. Adonai will raise anyone, whether they have been cremated, whether they have been eaten by a shark, or whatever the situation was. Adonai has the power to raise the dead, some to everlasting life and some to everlasting damnation, it says. But dust you are, and to dust you shall return. So it is our way to preserve that, and so we do tahara. The word tahara is the word to make clean or to become clean. And so we do several things. You are welcome after the service. We do always have a casket here available for whenever one of our brothers or sisters goes home. And it is in the back over here, and you're welcome to inspect it afterwards. It's made of 100% wood, no metal, so that when we do a ritual burial, the person with the wood in the wooden coffin will just go back to the ground, all natural. I guess today we could call it organic. Now, one of the things that we do is we do a ritual washing, a ritual tahara, washing, cleansing of the body. Our men do the men, and the women do the women. On Monday night, this Monday night, I am going to have a meeting at 6 o'clock. For those of you that would like to learn more about this, and we could spend more time than we have here, and then you're able to ask questions. I wrote a Tahara manual, and we have a Tahara directive that you could sign and give to your family, and your last will, testament, your final wishes. You could put that, and we will be able to perform a tahara on you. And to me, it is the most, moral, ethical, modest way of going, where we don't go through, have autopsies, or we don't do any kind of funeral type invasion of the body. We just do a cleansing. Again, if you are interested more in that, we'll leave that for Monday at 6. And we do need some women. We have our sister, and she's what, 94? Is Evie back there? She's 94, and I was told this last week that she wasn't doing too good. So some of you ladies might be called upon to do a tahara for one of our sisters. And look at that, we're talking about it today. So it's important for us to be able to, when it's my time, I want my family, my brothers and sisters, to prepare me, not strangers. When you go, you would want that. And so we don't make ourselves unclean for other things. By the way, we never bring a casket in here. We don't go to places where there's open caskets. We do the tahara in a neutral location. We've done them in hospitals. We've done them in nursing homes. We've done them in homes. We've done it in funeral homes if the person was taken to the funeral home. And we'll do it ourselves. We won't let them do it. We'll do it ourselves. We will just put you in sheets. We just wrap with sheets. We don't put a suit on or anything like that, or clothing. We wrap you in sheet the way Yeshua was, with a face cloth, just like Yeshua. Our tahara is Mosaic, but it's also Messianic and Apostolic, because this is the way we see it done in the Gospels and in the epistles, in the book of Acts, and the same way. And so, okay, so again, if you want to know more about that, please come on Monday night. Okay, let's get to our teaching here. Go to Leviticus 23. And Leviticus 23 says, Yahweh spoke to Moshe, and he said, speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, the Moedim to which you summon them are Mikra Kodesh. That's what the Hebrew says. The Moedim that you are to summon them are Mikra Kodesh. First of all, what is a Moedim? To find out what a Moedim is, go with me to the book of Genesis, the book of Breshit, at Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Genesis 1:14. And there it says, Elohim said, let there be lights in the vault of heaven to divide day from night, and let them indicate Moedim, days and years. So on the fourth day of creation, now how many of you are creationists? You believe that Adonai created the world? You don't believe that you guys are sons of monkeys? You don't believe that you guys came up an evolutionary ladder? To me, it takes more faith to believe all that than the word of Elohim. And so I believe this. Elohim said, on the fourth day of creation. So if you're a creationist, you agree with what we're going to teach today. Elohim said, let there be lights in the vault of heaven, in the universe, and let them divide day from night. So part of the array of heaven, the sun, the moon, the stars, are to divide day from night. It says, let them indicate Moedim. Let them be for otot. Let them be for signs, indicators, pointers. The sun, moon, stars are otot, pointers. They indicate. And what do they indicate? They indicate Moedim. Everybody say Moedim. The word Moedim comes from the Hebrew word moed. Singular moed, Moedim plural. And a moed is an appointed time. A moed is a time that Adonai is going to use to appoint. It's a sacred time in a sense. And over here, part of the sun and the moon is to point out these appointed times. And of course, it goes on to say, let them be for lights in the vault of heaven. And Elohim made the lights. And so this is where we get the word Moedim. Now remember, this is in creation on the fourth day. Now let's go back to Leviticus 23. And so now at Sinai, Adonai actually gets the Moedim, those appointed times, and he gives us the calendar he wants us to keep. Now, every one of you should know Leviticus 23 like the back of your hand. Every one of us should know Leviticus 23 like the back of our hand. That's our calendar. That's our yearly calendar. That's the calendar we follow. And it's built on the sun and the moon. It's built on the observation, and in the whole history of our people have observed when the month starts, when the year starts. They've observed these, and today we want to restore that which has been lost, stolen, forgotten, taken away, changed. We want to go back to 2 plus 2 equals 4. How many of you agree that 2 plus 2 equals 4? That's very simple, right? What was it, second grade, third grade, when we learned stuff like that? But can you imagine if someone teaches you, and they've taught you for years and years and years and years, that 2 plus 2 equals 5? Or 2 plus 2 equals 3, and they've taught you that, taught you that, taught you that. And then you ask them, what is 2 plus 2? 5. What is 2 plus 2? 3. No, someone taught you that, but that's not true. And when you tell them that's not true, they'll fight you and they say, no, that's what it is. That's what I've learned all my life. But then you get 2 sticks and 2 sticks. And all of a sudden you have how many sticks? 4 sticks. And so that's what we want to do here. That's our vision here. Speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, the Moedim of Yahweh. Now, one of the problems that we've had throughout the years, and this is, I just want to put this one away. Many call them, the Jewish holidays. Do you know there's no such thing as Jewish holidays? In fact, there's no such thing as holidays. Holidays is actually a way of saying a holy day. Well, if it's a holy day, let's call it a holy day. And these are not Jewish holidays. They are Moedim of Yahweh. And I could show you from the Hebrew that it says Moedim Yahweh. They're not even Israel's holidays. Although in Sinai, Adonai called Israel, he called our ancestors to live a life so that that life could be given to the whole world. The whole world needs Torah. In fact, if the whole world would live according to Torah, we would have a good world. It's because people don't follow Torah that we have all the problems, the sin in man, and not following Torah. In fact, Torah is hard even for us believers many times. Can you imagine the world? But one day, the Torah shall come out of Jerusalem and the word of Elohim from Zion. And the whole world is going to follow Torah when Messiah comes back, and he is the King of kings and the master of all masters. The whole world, whether they like it or not, he's going to rule with a rod of iron. And so these are Moedim Yahweh, it says there in the Hebrew, to which you summon them. These are summons. These are callings. Think of this. Adonai summons you to the Moedim. These are not optional. The Moedim are not optional. You don't do the Moedim when you want. Each Moedim, each Moed has protocols that are particular to it. You cannot do what is right in your own eyes. I know a lot of people do what is right in their own eyes. They've always done it. Our people have always done it. But we cannot do what is right in our own eyes. We must do what is right in His eyes. And every Moed, Adonai summons you. He summons you and He tells you, come, come. I want to meet with you. Notice that it's not so much I want you to meet, I want you to meet with me. He's not telling us he says, I want to meet with you. Adonai is making, every Moed is a reservation. Every Moed is a date. Every Moed is an appointment. Now, don't miss your doctor's appointment. If you miss your dentist's appointment, man, he's still going to charge you, right? Don't miss the reservation to fly to Israel. You'll lose your ticket. Definitely don't break the date that you made with that young lady, or else she's not going to say yes again. Those are appointments, reservation dates in our lives. And we've broken many reservation dates and appointments in our lifetime. But let me tell you, Adonai has appointments for you. You better not break. In fact, today's an appointment. You know today's an appointment? Those of you that are here, think of it. Well, I can't go to the Kehillah next week because I got to do this, I got to do that. Well, wait a second. Adonai takes precedence. Adonai takes precedence over any other thing. Today is not optional. Now, you could meet with Adonai any day of the week, by the way. You could study the Word any day of the week. You could pray any day of the week, morning, noon, and night. You have the whole week to do whatever you want. He gives you that freedom. But today is not optional. The Moedim of Yahweh are not optional. The 7 Moedim, which are in those 7 pictures over here, they are not optional. The Moedim of Yahweh to which you summon them are sacred assemblies. The word there, sacred assembly, is Mikra Kodesh. The word Mikra means an assembly. It means a meeting, a convocation, a rehearsal. And so every time we meet for a moed, it's a rehearsal of something. In fact, today, today the Sabbath, you know what we're rehearsing today? We're rehearsing our eternal Sabbath. In fact, my mom is in her eternal Sabbath. Our families that have gone home to be with Adonai that are believers are in their eternal Sabbath. So we come here and we are, you know what, by the way, when we get to our eternal Sabbath, the only thing, you're not going to have preaching. Nobody's going to preach to you no more. Nobody's going to teach you. Nobody's going to encourage you. You know what we're going to be doing? We're going to be doing what we did at the first. We're going to be praising and worshiping with all the angels of heaven. We're going to be shouting. And in fact, if you read the book of Revelation, it is a noisy place. Eternity and the New Jerusalem, the new earth, it's going to be a noisy place with thousands upon thousands, myriads upon myriads of angels and the people. We are going to be so praiseful because of our salvation that we're not going to contain ourselves. Today we try to contain ourselves and have a stiff upper lip or whatever. But you know what? Adonai for eternity is going to give us joy. So these are holy, kadosh, mikra kodesh. They're kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. They are set apart. These are set apart meetings. And so for every moed, there is a mikra kodesh. There is a set apart meeting that is done. And then it goes on to say, these are my moedim. And of course, you may work for 6 days, but the Sabbath must be a day of complete rest. A day for the Mikra Kodesh. Right now we're at Mikra Kodesh, on which you do no work at all. Wherever you live, this is a Sabbath for Yahweh. By the way, this is a Sabbath for who? It says Yahweh. This is not a Sabbath for Israel. This is not even a Sabbath for us. This is a ceasing of work in honor of Yahweh. In honor of Him. And what's important for us to understand is that when we think of, well, the Jews have Sabbath, the Saturday, the Muslims have Friday, the Christians have Sunday. Everybody's each to his own. No, it's not. Because let me tell you, on Judgment Day, on the great white throne, when all the unbelievers are going to be raised up, and the judgment of unbelievers there in Revelation 20, the great white throne, it says the books are going to be opened. And each one was judged by his works, what he had done in his life, good and bad. Now think of it. These are the unbelieving dead. These are not the believers. These are the unbelieving dead. One of those judgments that the whole world, every person from Adam to the last person, they're going to be judged on several things. They're going to be judged on marriage. They're going to be judged on the Sabbath. They're going to be judged on tithing. They're going to be judged on clean and unclean. Well, wait a second. I thought all those things were Jewish and Christian or Christian or this and that. No. Did you know that marriage is for the whole world? Adonai gave marriage to who? Adam and Eve. And he gave it to Adam and Eve, and Adonai blessed them. Marriage is the way Adonai calls the world. That's not for Christians only. That's not for Jews only. That's for everybody. Everybody who wants to live together must be married. What else? The Sabbath. Who did Adonai give the Sabbath to? Adam. Think of this. On the sixth day, Adonai created the male and female, blessed them. He performed the first wedding on the sixth day, what we would call a Friday. And then their honeymoon was on the Sabbath. They rested right away. And the next day, they began the first day of the week. The Sabbath was made at the beginning. We know that Adonai gave sacrifice and tithing to Adam and Eve because when their sons are born, what happens? Abel brings a tithe of the first of his flock. It says that Cain brought some of the bekurim, some of the first fruits, but it just says some. He kind of brought a tip to Adonai. And Adonai was blessed by Abel, but he wasn't blessed by Cain's offering. And so because of that, the first murder took place. Noah, again, we've mentioned this many times, but we need to remember, Noah, again, was told, take 2 of the unclean animals and 7 pairs of the clean animals. How did Noah know about clean and unclean? Why did he take clean and unclean? Because after the flood, on the other side of the flood, on our side of the flood, Adonai says to Noah, now you may eat of the animals. And Noah offers to Adonai of the clean animals, of the clean birds. He offers, Adonai doesn't want unclean. You don't offer Adonai unclean animals. Only clean. And so it's important for us to know that these are things that Adonai has given mankind. The Sabbath was made for mankind, Yeshua said, not mankind for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for, in fact, we like to call it the Sabbath servant. The Sabbath servant. The Sabbath is your servant. It's there to serve you. It's there to give you rest. It's there for you to have this time to meet and to study and to get closer to Adonai. By the way, you were not made for the Sabbath. Yeshua said, you were not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for you. The Sabbath is your servant. You were not made for the Sabbath. In fact, Sabbath is not the queen. I'm sorry to say, Sabbath is not the queen. I know many cultures use the term the Sabbath queen. Sabbath is not queen. Sabbath is servant. The Sabbath was made for you. You were not made for it. It was made for you. These are Yahweh's solemn festivals, his Moedim, the Mikra Kodesh, to which you are to summon the sons of Israel on the appointed day, on the Moed. On the what? Appointed day. Now, every one of these has an appointed day. Every one of these has an appointed day. Sorry, you can't appoint your own days. They do. Both in the Judaisms and the Christianities, everybody appoints their own days. Everybody does what they want. In fact, in the Christianities, they've taken away the Sabbath and they went to Sunday. Wait, where did it say there's a change from Saturday? There isn't. You can't find it in the Word. That is mankind's doing. That's man's doing. And these are my sacred assemblies, my Moedim, on the appointed day. The 14th day of the first month between the two evenings is the Passover of Yahweh. So what does it say? What day? The 14th day. The 14th day of the first month. When is the first month? That is found in Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. This month, the month of Aviv, is the first of all months for you. This is Rosh Hashanah, the first month of the year, the head of the year. The biblical Rosh Hashanah, 2 plus 2 equals what? 4. Not 2 plus 2 equals 5. No additions, please. Let's go back to getting 4 sticks and saying 1, 2, 3, 4. Exodus 12. Adonai's word. This month, this moon, this new moon. And when does the new moon appear? The new moon will always appear on the western horizon, and it'll be a sliver. When you see the sliver, that's the beginning of the month. And it'll always appear in Jerusalem first, and we count from Jerusalem. And then it'll appear here in Albuquerque that evening. And then we start counting. This is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And on the 14th day, after the first new moon, right after the equinox, that's Aviv, then that's Passover night. Now, you can't do Passover the day before. You can't do it the day after. You can't do it when you want. You only do it on the 14th. By the way, a little while ago, my daughter announced that we're going to be having a Passover this Tuesday night for those of you that missed the first Passover. Well, why are we doing that? Because in Numbers chapter 9, what happened is that we had Passover was coming, and there in chapter 9, verse 1 following, Moses is telling people, let's do Passover. This is the second year. And that day, there was a couple of brothers, and one of their family members died. And of course, they went to go do the burial. So they buried their dead loved one. But now they're unclean. Remember, what does death bring? Uncleanness. They were unclean. So they come up to Moses. Moses, we want to do Passover, but we're unclean. Moses say, oh, do it whenever you want. No, he didn't say that. He says, let me ask Adonai. So he goes before Adonai, and Adonai comes to Moshe, and he says, this is what you do. On the second month, on the 14th day of the second month, if for some reason someone is unclean or they're on a journey or other emergency, then they could partake of it one time during the year. Passover is only once during the year. It's not like the Catholics do it and the Christians do it once a week or once a month or once every quarter or whenever they want. You don't do Passover whenever you want. You only do it when? You do it once a year. You have to figure out 14 days from the new moon after the equinox. Very simple. 2 plus 2 equals what? 4. And then it says, and the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days. So you have the first day, Passover, the 14th, and then the 15th for the next 7 days to the 21st, from the 15th to 21st, is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's a 7-day feast. And the 1st, the 15th, and the 21st of Unleavened Bread are what I called minor Sabbaths. Now, again, I want to go back to that 2 plus 2. I know that kind of sounds, you're doing it too much, but it's important that we really realize it. Scripture does not call them Sabbaths at all. In fact, today they're called high Sabbaths. Scripture doesn't use that term. It says, on that day you shall do no work, and you shall have a sacred assembly. All it says, on that day you shall do no servile work or no heavy work. It doesn't even say you shall do no work. It says you shall do no servile work. Of course, when it says on the Sabbath, you shall do no work, and of course, Yom Kippur, the Shabbat, Shabbaton, definitely no work. But the first and last is that. Let's go to the next one. When you enter the land, verse 10, gather the harvest there. You must bring the first sheaf of your harvest, and he is to present it to Yahweh with a gesture of offering, so that you may be acceptable. The priest shall make this offering on the day after the Sabbath. Now, of course, this is the day after the Sabbath. Remember, the 15th is not called a Sabbath. The 15th is not called a Sabbath. It's a day of no servile work, no heavy work. So therefore, the only day that we have for the Sabbath is the 7th-day Sabbath. And what's the day after the 7th-day Sabbath? Yom Rishon, the first day of the week. And on the first day of the week after Passover is the day of the first sheaf, when our ancestors used to offer this first sheaf that I have here, and they would offer it before Adonai with a gesture of offering. Every year, this was offered on the first day of the week. And then it goes on to say, verse 15, from the day after the Sabbath, the day on which you bring the sheaf of offering, you are to count 7 full weeks. Notice that it says you are to count how many? 7 full weeks. To the day, you are to count the 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you are to offer Yahweh a new oblation. And this is what we call Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. So we have Passover, we have unleavened bread, 7 days. We have the Bekurim, the day of first sheaf, and then we have the Shavuot, the weeks, 7 weeks. These are the first festivals of Yahweh, the first Moedim of Yahweh, that Scripture says we must keep to the day, at the appointed day. And of course, right now we're in the middle of the counting of the weeks. And we have, this is the 4th week, and we have 3 more weeks to go before the Feast of Shavuot, which will always occur on also a Yom Rishon, on a Sunday. Of course, there's other counting methods that people have added because of a misunderstanding that the 15th is a Sabbath. Then they start counting from that day, and they always get to Sivan 6, but that's 2 plus 2 equals 5. Okay, and then it goes on to say, verse 24, the first day of the 7th month shall be a day of rest for you, a sacred assembly proclaimed with trumpet call, with a shofar. You must do no heavy work, and you must offer Yahweh a burnt offering. This is what we call the Feast of Trumpets. And this has been called Rosh Hashanah. And the reason it's been called Rosh Hashanah, there was no other name. It's interesting that this is the only one that there's nothing to do. Why? You just get together on that day and blow the shofar. Why? Well, man has, again, added Rosh Hashanah here. But remember, Rosh Hashanah is not here. Rosh Hashanah is when? Exodus 12:1, the first day of the new moon after the equinox. Very simple. And then, verse 27, the 10th day of the 7th month shall be the Day of Atonement. And then in verse 33, The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles, lasting 7 days. And so these are the Moedim. We have talked about them. We're going to continue to talk about them. On Wednesday nights right now, we're getting ready for Shavuot. So if you want to learn more about the feast, come and join us on Wednesday nights, and we'll talk about Shavuot and what the purpose of Shavuot is. Adonai wants to do mighty works with us. But I want us to know that these Moedim, these appointed times, are days when Adonai is saying, I want to meet with you. I want to have fellowship with you. I want to teach you some things. There's things that we need to rehearse. We rehearsed the death of Yeshua. Our ancestors from the time of Moses rehearsed the death of Yeshua on Passover. They rehearsed the burial of Yeshua on unleavened bread. They rehearsed the resurrection of Yeshua on the day of the first sheaf. And they rehearsed the coming of the Holy Spirit on Shavuot. They did all those and rehearsed, and then Yeshua fulfilled them to the day. Right now, we're rehearsing the last three. On the next one, the Feast of Trumpets, we're rehearsing the resurrection. On Yom Kippur, we're rehearsing when Yeshua comes back, and they shall look upon him whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him. And on that